After my husband cheated on me, I wanted a divorce. He threatened me with our son. If you insist on getting a divorce, our son will take my family name. He belongs to my family. I will have custody of him. You won't even be able to see him anymore. If this had happened before, I would definitely have educated my husband about the law and cursed at him. But unfortunately, I was reborn just yesterday. I nodded readily and said, "Fine. Since you won't even let me see him anymore, then I won't pay a single cent of child support." 01 I was reborn. In my previous life, on the second day after I got sick, my son disappeared on me and took away all my money. He only left me one sentence: "Mom, you are so old. This disease costs so much money and can't be cured. Just think of your son pitifully and leave some money for your son, okay?" Me, I'm just over 50. How am I old? Besides, it's early-stage lung cancer. The doctor said it can be cured. How can it not be cured? People only say that there are no filial sons by a long sickbed. I was just diagnosed, and my unfilial son ran away. And he took the money and ran. I was really shocked. All these years, I divorced and raised him alone, but I raised such an ungrateful person. To survive, I had to go to the police and ask them to help find my unfilial son. As a result, misfortunes never come singly. During a taxi ride, I got into a car accident and died. Me, God, did my unfilial son pay you? 02 facts prove that God is not on the same side as my unfilial son. When I opened my eyes again, I went back to 13 years ago when I was divorcing my ex-husband Frank. The reason for our divorce is very simple. Middle-aged couples have lost their passion and are tired of seeing each other, coupled with Frank being a mama's boy and very obedient to his mother. So, he listened to his mother. To make life more exciting again, he chose to cheat. And he made his mistress pregnant. The mistress sent him a message saying she was pregnant, and I just happened to see it. But Frank was shameless. In this situation, he still didn't want to divorce. He said he would make the mistress abort the child and break off with the mistress. Of course, the reason he didn't want to divorce was not that he still had feelings for me or that he wanted to keep this family for our son. Instead, he wanted to force me to leave with nothing. After I disagreed, he threatened me with custody of our son and said, "Lynn, if you insist on divorcing, our son will take my family name. He belongs to my family. I will have custody of him. You won't even be able to see him anymore." Without thinking, I nodded and said, "Fine. Since you won't even let me see him anymore, then I won't pay a single cent of child support." Frank probably didn't expect me to agree so readily. He looked at me in disbelief. Indeed, after all, just last night before I was reborn, I was still in a fierce struggle with Frank over custody of our son. 03 My son Kevin was brought up by me alone, and I have put in 12 years of hard work. My mother-in-law, who promised to help take care of the grandchild before marriage, based on the principle of, the hardships I have endured must be endured by my daughter-in-law again, otherwise I will feel cheated. After Kevin was born, went back on her word and refused to help take care of the grandchild. She refused to help at all under various reasons such as high blood pressure, backache, bronchitis, etc. My father died early. My mother is not in good health. There is also a younger brother in college who needs money. She has to go to work. So, I had to quit my job and take care of the child myself. But not only did my mother-in-law not help, she also wanted to raise the grandchild from afar. She was afraid that I would be a bit more relaxed. Before Kevin was 1 year old, in the name of being good for the child, she pointed fingers at me in various ways, from "children can't use diapers, they have to use cloth diapers," to "children so young can't drink milk powder, they must be breastfed," and then to "children's clothes can't be washed by washing machine, they must be washed by hand." It was almost as if she was directly grabbing my neck and asking me, "Why can't you endure more hardships so that I can feel psychologically balanced?" It wasn't until I forced Frank to leave Kevin with her for 3 days and told her, "If you think you can do it, then you do it," that she finally shut up. After Kevin started primary school at over 6 years old, I started working. All her various illnesses miraculously got better. Every weekend, she must come to my house to see her grandson. If I don't let Kevin do something, she must secretly take Kevin to do it. Then she would say to Kevin, "See, Grandma loves you the most. Your mom is an outsider and really doesn't love my grandson at all." After Kevin was taken by her like this a few times, he really quarreled with me and called me an outsider. Because of this, I educated Kevin and quarreled with my mother-in-law. Frank also tried to smooth things over and said that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. He also said that Kevin was just a child speaking without thinking and asked me not to take it to heart. He also said that his mother was just loving her grandson. So, I had several big fights with Frank and completely cut off contact with his family. Whether it was on weekends or during festivals, Frank and I became people who went back to our own homes and found our own mothers. Probably because of this, my mother-in-law disliked me even more and started to urge Frank to divorce me and find someone else. Frank is indeed a mama's boy. In the following years, he really found someone else behind my back. 04 at this moment, after looking at me in disbelief for a while, seeing that my attitude was firm and I didn't seem to be joking, he immediately changed his tone and scolded me. "Lynn, do you have a conscience? The son is also a piece of flesh that fell from your body. Aren't you afraid that your son will be sad when he hears what you said?" Thinking about what Kevin did after I got sick in my previous life, I thought to myself that I don't know if he is sad or not. Anyway, I was really in danger, and Frank's words of blaming me made me feel sick. I retorted, "When you were cheating, you didn't even think about having a son. Wouldn't your son be sad because your beastly behavior of not being able to control your lower body made him lose his home? What right do you have to ask me if I still have a conscience? Frank, if you don't want me to make a scene at your company, then don't argue with me. Let's get divorced quietly. You can still keep your job and reputation." Frank. Frank and I got to know each other through a blind date. The house and car were all bought after marriage. So, I said again, "If we get divorced, the car and son will belong to you, and the house and savings will belong to me." Frank immediately refused. He said, "Why?" I snared at him. "Just because you cheated." I paused. "You will be competing for the department head in a few months. If you don't agree to divorce or don't agree to this division of property, then don't compete for the department head. I will definitely ruin your reputation and make your mistress a target of public criticism." Frank roared, "Lynn, are you crazy? Do you know how much effort I have put in to become the department head? Now if you mess up my job, what will I rely on to support my family?" I said sarcastically, "Whose family are you supporting? It has nothing to do with me if you support the family of you and your mistress." Frank. "If you make such a fuss, you are completely not going to care about the life and death of our son, right?" I said, "Right." After thinking for a while, I added, "And the money you spent on your mistress is also our joint property. If you don't ask her to return it, tomorrow, I will find a lawyer to sue her." Frank. 05 In my previous life, in order to get custody of Kevin, I didn't make things too ugly when divorcing Frank. Everything was divided equally. Afraid that Kevin would be scared seeing me and Frank arguing, I even argued with Frank behind Kevin's back. After the divorce, because the mistress was pregnant and would give birth soon. If they bought a new house and renovated it, the mistress wouldn't be able to move in when she gave birth. So, in order to keep the house and live with the mistress, Frank gave me 300,000 yuan. Then I took Kevin and moved out and bought a new house. Fortunately, City A is not a first-tier or second-tier city, and the housing prices are not particularly outrageous. With 300,000 yuan plus some of my own savings, it was enough for me to pay the down payment and have money for renovation. I was also afraid that Kevin would feel inferior thinking that he was a child abandoned by his father. After the divorce, I never said a bad word about Frank in front of him. But after Frank's mistress gave birth to a child, he didn't even give Kevin's alimony anymore. When I went to ask Frank for alimony, the mistress held the child and deliberately angered me, saying, "A second-hand house that you lived in is not worth the original price at all. Of course, half of the 300,000 yuan is alimony for your son." She smiled and disgusted me again, saying, "Of course, I also thank you for being willing to move out. Otherwise, when I give birth, if Frank and I buy a new house, we won't be able to move in temporarily. It's troublesome." Only then did I sue Frank in court. But even after I sued him, Frank still repeatedly defaulted on the alimony that should be given to Kevin. Only occasionally on a whim would he go to the school to see Kevin. So, after we divorced, it was almost me who raised Kevin alone. The purpose of my suing Frank was not only to get Frank to pay alimony, but also to prevent Frank from being shameless in the future. Obviously, he didn't raise a son, but he asked his son to support him in his old age. This way, I could leave evidence that he didn't raise his son. But no matter how much I did and how much I sacrificed, it was all in vain against Frank's meanness. He didn't pay a penny when Kevin was in school. After Kevin graduated, he paid part of the down payment for Kevin's house. Then he told Kevin all kinds of lies that I didn't allow him to see Kevin all these years. Even the 300,000 yuan he gave me to keep the house was said to be alimony for Kevin. And Kevin, because of the down payment of more than 100,000 yuan from his dad, directly denied my more than 20 years of financial and time investment. Not only did he call his dad affectionately, but he even directly called Frank's mistress Mom. When I was dissatisfied, he yelled at me, "Mom, how long are you going to remember those old things? Do you just not want me to have any good relationship with Dad? You are really becoming more and more unreasonable." I taught Kevin for more than 20 years but couldn't instill correct values in him. It's my problem. I give up. Anyway, he will call the mistress Mom later. Now, starting over again, I fulfill him and let him call the mistress Mom right now. But this time, the mistress won't be able to give birth and recuperate in my house in peace. 06 The next day, I printed the divorce agreement and asked Frank to sign it. We would go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to handle the divorce immediately. Frank still didn't agree. He thought that for Kevin's sake, I definitely wouldn't dare to really go to his company and make a fuss. I really didn't go to his company and make a fuss right now. Instead, I went to the company where his mistress works. The mistress, Queenie, works in a private enterprise and has cooperation with Frank's company. The two got involved when discussing cooperation. When Queenie saw me at the company entrance, she was only panicked for a moment. Then, she immediately calmed down. Before I could even speak, she took the initiative to shout at me, "Lynn, if you can't control your own man, what are you looking for me for? If you have the ability, ask Frank not to divorce you." She was even a little smug. No wonder brother Frank doesn't like you anymore. If you have something, you don't solve it with him first. Coming to find an outsider like me is embarrassing. Sure enough, you can't expect a mistress to have shame and a sense of morality. I just don't know if she can still be so calm later. I didn't even bother to argue with her. I directly took out a small loudspeaker and started playing the recorded audio. Congratulations to Queenie from the sales department for capturing my husband's heart. She successfully had sex with my husband and is now pregnant. Queenie is awesome. Although the loudspeaker is small, the sound is huge. It is just off-duty time now. There are a great many people coming and going. In order to watch the excitement, most of the employees of their company have gathered at the company gate. When Queenie heard the words played on the loudspeaker, she was so angry that she looked like a pufferfish. The embarrassment happened in an instant. She hurriedly called Frank. As a result, after 3 minutes, Frank didn't answer. Of course Frank wouldn't answer. Now is his meeting time. 20 minutes later, I turned off the loudspeaker. Looking at Queenie, who was so anxious that she was already crying, I said, "I will come again tomorrow to help you publicize this once-in-a-lifetime love between you and my husband." Queenie. When I got home, Frank was already at home. Looking at his irritable appearance, Queenie's call to him had been answered. As soon as I entered the door, he was furious. "Lynn, are you really crazy, right? What are you doing making a scene at Queenie's company?" I gave him a blank look. "If you don't sign, in a few days, I will make a scene at the gate of your company. If you want to risk your future for half a sweet, I will let you." As he said, he has worked overtime and made a lot of efforts in order to compete for this supervisor position. As long as he is promoted, his salary can increase by another 5,000. The housing price in City A is not high. The total value of our house is only about 600,000. Sure enough, Frank took 3 deep breaths. Sign. I'll sign it now. I handed over the divorce agreement neatly. As a result, the next day, after my mother-in-law knew about this agreement, she also came to my door. She pointed at me and shouted, "Lynn, why do you want my son to leave the house with nothing? You still go to make a scene at Queenie's company. I tell you, if anything happens to the child in Queenie's belly." I interrupted her, "I don't want to know. Don't tell me. But I can tell you clearly that if you come to me again, I will go to Frank's company now and make Frank lose his job. Then you won't get a penny from Frank every month." I really thought I didn't know that Frank secretly gave his mother 5,000 yuan out of his 15,000 yuan salary every month. My mother-in-law looked at me, her eyes almost bulging like copper bells. She shut up. After all, she is extremely fond of money. But probably still unable to swallow this anger, she went to find my son. I don't know what she said to Kevin. In the evening, when Kevin came back from school, he actually came to quarrel with me. 07 Since I was reborn a few days ago, I haven't paid much attention to Kevin. Being disappointed in him is a minor matter. The main reason is that I'm afraid I can't help but slap him. At the age of 12, he hasn't done the thing of taking my life-saving money and telling me to die. But he is really very annoying. After being instigated by his grandma, he started to anger me as soon as he entered the door. He said, "Mom, Dad just cheated once. Dad has already admitted his mistake to you. Why can't you forgive him? You still want to make Dad lose his job. If Dad loses his job, how can we live? With your little salary, we can't even afford to drink the northwest wind. Can't you think about me? I just started junior high school. You want to divorce Dad? It has a great impact on me." He also yelled at me hysterically, "You must divorce Dad. I will be with Dad and not with you." Me? ? It's a deal. Whoever goes back on it is a dog. Kevin was even angrier and started swearing at me directly. "Mom, why are you always so annoying? When I was a child, you didn't even allow me to eat a candy. I had to ask Grandma for it behind your back to eat it. Now that I haven't grown up yet, you want to abandon your husband and son just to live a good life for yourself." Me? If Kevin hadn't been reborn with me, as soon as one heard these words, one would know that they were taught by Grandma. I asked, "Have you forgotten that you have dental caries and can't eat candy? Is your grandma doing this for your own good?" He simply took the opportunity to speak for Grandma. "What did Grandma do to offend you? You didn't even allow Grandma to enter our house before. Now even when she is kind to me, you think she is harming me." Me? It's impossible to reason with him. Over the years, he has been taught badly by Grandma and Frank behind my back. However, in my previous life, I was so blind that I couldn't see it. I was also afraid that after I divorced Frank, he would continue to be taught badly by Grandma and Frank, so I must take him away by myself. While I was secretly scolding myself, he said something else that almost made me drop my glasses. He said, "You and Dad have been together for so many years. What else can you do except cooking a few meals for Dad at home? And yet, you keep nagging Dad about how much you have contributed. In my opinion, Queenie's mother is much better than you. She is well-dressed and gentle. Even when I wanted a drone last time and Queenie's mother knew about it, she bought it for me readily. Unlike you, who are stingy and don't buy me anything." She also said that as long as I call her mom, she can buy me anything I want in the future and treat me like her own son. He said firmly, "Mom, do you think this family can't function without you? Let me tell you, this family will only be better without you." Me? ? So, he has always known that his dad is having an affair and has even gone out with Queenie. Beautiful. I am the only fool. I scolded angrily, "Ungrateful son, have you forgotten that your grandma only bought you a few candies? And Queenie only bought you a toy? And it is your mom who has taken care of all your food, drink, and daily life since you were little. I bought them. But Kevin said contemptuously, "Bah, what do you mean by you bought everything? Obviously it's all Dad who gives the money. If it weren't for Dad earning money to support the family, with your little salary, even beggars would starve to death if you gave it to them." I laughed when I heard this. What kind of noble beggar would starve to death with more than 10,000 yuan a month? After Kevin started primary school, I went back to my original company to continue working as a salesperson. Over the years, I have been doing better and better. By the time I divorced Frank, my salary was almost the same as Frank's. In the years since I started working, I have been covering most of Kevin's major expenses. Kevin was even more contemptuous. "Don't talk so sweetly. What can you pay with? Grandma said that all your money has been given to your uncle. Not to mention the money you gave your uncle before. Just 2 years ago, the 50,000 yuan you lent to your uncle. Has he returned it? You say it's a loan, but clearly you are a brother-dependent demon and just gave it to your uncle directly." Me? After a while, I remembered. 2 years ago, when my younger brother got married, he was still short of 50,000 yuan and asked if I could help him out urgently. I have a very good relationship with my younger brother. After he graduated, he also borrowed money from me, but he always repaid it. Of course, I have also borrowed from him. 08 In my previous life, when I divorced Frank, my mother had already passed away. I was taking care of Kevin by myself. Before I bought a new house and did the renovation, I had been living at my younger brother's house. My younger brother and sister-in-law treated Kevin as if he were their own child. Since I started living with them with Kevin, whatever their child had, Kevin would definitely have. But Kevin couldn't get close to my younger brother and sometimes had resistance towards him. At that time, my younger brother comforted me and said, "Maybe it's because you divorced your brother-in-law and he feels bad." It turns out that it's not that he feels bad because I divorced Frank. Instead, since he was little, he was taught by his grandma that I am a brother-dependent demon. So, he doesn't like my younger brother. I was so angry that I took out my younger brother's repayment record from my phone. Not only did he repay the 50,000 yuan, but my younger brother also gave an extra 500 yuan, saying it was money to buy a gift for Kevin. After showing Kevin the repayment record, I angrily slapped Kevin twice. "Kevin, for all these years, you can't see my efforts at all. Your grandma did nothing, but with just a few words, you believed everything." Kevin was probably stunned by my slap and looked at me in disbelief. I can't beat the 25-year-old Kevin. For the 12-year-old Kevin, I could still easily give him a beating. But I can't. As soon as I slapped him twice, Frank and my mother-in-law pushed the door and entered. Frank came in and shouted at me first, "Lynn, for our adult matters, why are you venting your anger on your son?" My mother-in-law, on the other hand, hugged Kevin and started her exaggerated performance. "Good grandson, let grandma see where your mom hit you." She must have heard me arguing with Kevin and the reason for hitting Kevin just now outside the door. While looking at the slap marks on Kevin's face, she continued to slander me. "I said your mom doesn't love you at all. Now she can even hit you because of your uncle." After slandering me, she looked at me and scolded, "Lynn, you bitch. It's fine if you are a brother-dependent demon. Now you even hit your son for your younger brother. Are you still a human being?" I didn't want to bark like a dog with her. I just looked at Frank and said, "Let's go to the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow. I won't hold you and your family back from being affectionate." Frank also hugged Kevin and said, "If you want a divorce, then let's divorce. With a mother like you, it's no different from not having a mother." 09 A month later, I divorced Frank. As I requested, the car and son belonged to Frank, and the savings and house belonged to me. For my son's alimony, I give 1,000 yuan every month. The money that Frank spent on Queenie in these years, the accounts that I found on the surface, Queenie has all returned to me. It's a total of 65,000 yuan. For the hidden ones, I can't find them and don't want to waste that effort. Anyway, even if I don't check anymore, someone will naturally check. When I went to the Civil Affairs Bureau with Frank to handle the divorce, it was summer vacation for Kevin, so he also came along. When we came out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Kevin, who was following behind his grandma, looked at me viciously and said, "Take care of yourself. Do you really think that after you divorce my dad, there will still be someone who wants you? When you are old in the future, I will not take care of you and will not recognize you anymore. Don't beg me in the future, Motherland." And my mother-in-law, my former mother-in-law, showed a smug smile at me. Me, exclamation point. Well taught. Just because of his words, Motherland, I will not give the alimony of 1,000 yuan per month that I originally promised. Let him sue me. I waved at him, don't worry. I won't beg you even if I become a beggar. But I remind you of one thing. When there is a stepmother, there is a stepfather. Keep a low profile. After saying that, I left in a proud manner. After the divorce, I took my annual leave and went on a trip. In my previous life, after I divorced Frank, since it was me and Kevin who moved out, after the divorce, I started to be busy buying a house and doing the renovation. Plus, Kevin was in junior high school. While I was working, I also had to take care of his studies. I was so busy that I didn't even have time to look at myself. This time, I decided to be better to myself. To hell with my son. He will already have a stepmother who treats him as her own son. The month after I divorced Frank, just like in my previous life, he and Queenie got married quietly. And after I made a scene at Queenie at that time, it is said that she resigned. Coincidentally, she is pregnant and it's not easy to find a new job, so she stays at home and waits for the delivery. But unlike in my previous life, when I didn't take the house, she could move directly into the house that Frank and I used to live in. So, she temporarily moved to my former mother-in-law's, Frank's mother's house. In a nice way, she let Frank's mother take care of her. When I heard this news from a friend, I almost laughed out loud. How big a hole is in Queenie's brain? She starts to find trouble for herself even when she is pregnant. Who is Frank's mother? She is a troublemaker who can't bear to see her daughter-in-law live a comfortable life at all. If Queenie can live in Frank's family peacefully for 2 months, I will admit defeat. I still remember that in the previous life, after Queenie got married to Frank and didn't live with Frank's mother, she had several big fights with Frank's mother, which became known to everyone. Sure enough, in less than 2 months, when I was shopping in the mall, I ran into Queenie arguing with Frank's mother. The reason is that Queenie wants to buy a bag. Frank's mother thinks that thing is expensive and can't be eaten as food, so she doesn't let her buy it. The two of them exchanged insults about each other's 18 generations of ancestors. Frank's mother, sure enough, she is from a mistress background. She only knows how to spend men's money. She doesn't think about how hard my son works and how difficult it is to earn money. Queenie, old hag, watch your mouth. You feel sorry for your son's hard work in earning money. Then reduce the number of cram schools for your grandson. Don't buy this and that all the time. He is now a child without a mother. He has no sense at all. He still dared to ask us for a game console the day before yesterday. Why doesn't he go to heaven? Frank's mother, what's wrong with my son spending money on my grandson? You are an outsider. You can manage everything. Can you still manage how others raise their sons? TSK. Sure enough, as soon as a daughter-in-law enters Frank's family, in Frank's mother's eyes, she is an outsider. My unfilial son seems to have not listened to my advice at all. In just a few months, he has been disliked by his stepmother. I predicted this result when I divorced and didn't take custody of Kevin. I was too lazy to continue listening to how Queenie scolded my unfilial son. Just as I was about to leave, I was spotted by the sharp-eyed Queenie. Queenie probably had a muddled mind from arguing with Frank's mother. She actually came to satirize me and said, "If you don't take your own son with you, are you worthy of being a mother?" Since I came back from rebirth, I have realized a truth. That is, when there is a mother scolding you, don't hold it in. Otherwise, it is easy to get sick. So, I directly retorted to Queenie, "Oh, isn't this the person who said she would treat my unfilial son as her own and took in my ex-husband's trash can? It's only been a few months." Is your trash can full and can't hold anymore? Queenie. What I didn't say is that her difficult days are still to come. She has lost her job now and is staying at home to take care of her pregnancy at ease. Although she often has conflicts with Frank's mother, at least Frank will stand by her side and help her speak up considering she is pregnant. But it won't be long before Frank will be in trouble himself. Why did Frank hurriedly sign and divorce me as soon as I made a scene at Queenie's place? Even getting a marriage certificate with Queenie was done quietly? Because he is competing for a supervisor position. Since it is a competition, of course he is not the only competitor. His opponents, in order to push him down, would even spread rumors about him. And his competitors really found something about him. For the contract that he and Queenie negotiated together at the beginning, in order to please Queenie, Frank operated illegally and let Queenie get tens of thousands more in commission. Long finger marks, and the face is still swollen. My younger brother is educating him. Kevin, your mom is here. Apologize to your mom properly. Your mom has endured a lot of grievances in your family for you over the years. You still hurt her heart like this. I gave my younger brother a blank look and said, it's useless to tell these things to a wide-eyed wolf. Before I finished speaking, Kevin got up, hugged my leg, and knelt down in front of me, crying, Mom, I'm wrong. Please, let me be with you. My dad hit me. 13 in Kevin's words, after Frank lost his job, the already disharmonious family had even more intense conflicts. Frank's mother originally couldn't bear to see her daughter-in-law live well. Now that her son is unemployed, she attributes all the reasons for her son's unemployment to Queenie. She scolds in the house all day long, saying that Queenie, this vixen, seduced Frank, which made Frank lose his mind and do something wrong and be fired by the company. Queenie is not to be outdone and argues back with her. Dead old hag, when you accepted my gifts before, why didn't you call me a vixen? And you even urged Frank to divorce and marry me? Now that Frank is unemployed, you blame it on me. If you want to blame someone, shouldn't you blame yourself for urging your son to divorce? If you are senile, then hurry up and die. Don't live and disgust others. She glanced at Kevin, who was doing homework on the side out of the corner of her eye, and simply scolded Kevin as well. Now the family economy is so tight, and you still want Frank to support Kevin, this wild child who has a mother but is not raised by a mother. I tell you, I put my words here today. Frank and I will not pay a penny for this wild child's expenses anymore. In the heat of the argument, the two even fought. But Queenie is already more than 6 months pregnant. After being slapped several times by Frank's mother and pushed, she directly went to the hospital for fetal protection. Hitting a pregnant woman is quite outrageous. But even more outrageous is that between coaxing his mother and coaxing his wife, Frank chose to educate his son. When he got home, he scolded Kevin first. He scolded him from doing nothing at home and being extremely lazy, to only knowing how to spend money every day and not knowing to ask his biological mother for money, and then to not having any sense at all and not even knowing to stop his stepmother and grandma from arguing. Finally, he concluded that raising Kevin, such a useless person, is not as good as raising a dog. Oh, Frank also exonerated me, by the way, and said, no wonder your mother doesn't want you. It turns out that your mother saw long ago that you are not a good thing. Me. And just today, Queenie was discharged from the hospital and returned home. The first thing I did when I got home was to transfer all of Frank's money to my own card and stop paying for all of Kevin's interest classes. Not only that, but when Kevin wanted to fight back, Frank quickly intercepted him. Then, Frank gave Kevin a spanking. And Frank's mother, who had always been calling Kevin good grandson, this and that, quietly went out when Frank was hitting Kevin and pretended not to see it. She definitely had to pretend not to see it. If she saw it, Kevin would become her responsibility from now on. Her principle is to cause trouble for others but not take on trouble for herself. TSK. I had told Kevin long ago that once there is a stepmother, there is a stepfather. I told him to keep a low profile, but he didn't listen. Mom, I really know I was wrong this time. After Kevin finished speaking, he hugged my thigh even tighter. I will listen to everything you say from now on. Take me back, Mom. I looked at his swollen face, pried his fingers apart, and said word by word, Kevin, I don't want you. From now on, just pretend you don't have me as your mother. He slumped to the ground. Just because I made a few mistakes before, you will never forgive me for the rest of my life? I am your own son. I thought about what he had done in my previous life and said, yes, I will never forgive you. My younger brother still wanted to persuade me, but I stopped him with a look. Life is important. 14 I thought that from then on, Kevin should never come to me again. As a result, more than a year later, not only did he come, but he also brought his father with him. The purpose of coming to find me is even more outrageous. Begging me to remarry his father. I do know that Frank has divorced again. Because after Queenie gave birth to a daughter, Frank's mother still couldn't bear to see her have any good fortune. Even under the same roof, she would never lend a helping hand. Just like when she was raising a grandson in the clouds, at my place, she pointed fingers at Queenie's way of taking care of her daughter. Queenie couldn't stand her bad temper. So, less than 2 months after she gave birth, after having several big fights with Frank's mother, she simply left her daughter to Frank. In my previous life, Queenie could stay with Frank even after their fights became known to everyone because Frank didn't lose his job and was even promoted to a supervisor. Although not extremely wealthy, at least he had money to support the family and wouldn't hold Queenie back. But in this life, after Frank was fired last time, his colleagues spread the story of him and Queenie everywhere. City A is not big, so he is almost blacklisted by the entire industry and has never found a good job. Now in middle age, changing careers is like starting all over again. Queenie doesn't want to accompany him to struggle again. Not long after she left, taking advantage of her beauty, she quickly resumed her old profession and became a mistress for someone else. After the green hat was put on Frank himself, he felt disgusted. So, he divorced Queenie. 2 months ago, when they divorced, I secretly sighed. The green hat will not disappear but only transfer. And Queenie didn't want the child either and forcibly left her daughter with Frank's family. So, I smiled and congratulated Frank. Congratulations. Now you have both a son and a daughter. You are happy and fulfilled. Also congratulate your mother. From now on, whether it's a grandson or a granddaughter, there will be no outsiders to compete with her. She can finally enjoy this family happiness alone. Frank. Frank's face was uglier than if he had eaten a fly, but it didn't affect his shamelessness at all. Lynn, before, I was blinded by lard and didn't see that Queenie is such a shameless person. Forgive me once. He played the emotional card with me. We have gone through more than 10 years together. We went through such difficulties back then. Now the child is not yet an adult. Do you really bear to leave me and our son? He paused. So, shall we remarry? Me? ? If he didn't mention it, I would have almost forgotten. We also went from having nothing to having a car, a house, and a son later. I said, now you know how difficult it was for us back then? In the 3rd year of our marriage, when Kevin was born, your mother didn't help. The combined salary of you and me was less than 15,000 yuan. We couldn't afford a nanny. My salary was 3,000 yuan less than yours. I quit my job and took care of Kevin myself. But what did you and your mother teach Kevin? You said, look, your mother is so lucky. She does nothing at home and still gets to eat and drink for free at your house. The year we bought a car, we were short of some money. I borrowed 20,000 yuan from my younger brother. When we repaid the money, you yourself agreed that I could pay an extra 200 yuan to treat my younger brother to a meal, right? But in your mother's mouth, I am a brother-dependent demon, and all the money goes to my younger brother. She would tell Kevin this every time she saw him. When I educated Kevin because of this, you clearly knew that I am not a brother-dependent demon, but not only did you not say a word for me, but you also said, children are innocent. Why are you so petty and care about your own son? I couldn't stop scolding. Speaking of shamelessness, aren't you and your mother the most shameless? What are you doing here looking for me now? Let me go back and continue to be a sucker? When Frank saw that playing the emotional card not only didn't move me but also made me scold him, he glanced at Kevin. Then, my unfilial son once again made a request that made me want to strangle him. He said, "Mom, Dad and I now know we were wrong. We all need you. Will you come back?" Grandma also said that as long as you come back, she will definitely not make things difficult for you anymore and will never say a bad word about you again. Me, who can Frank's mother make things difficult for now? She can't even take care of herself now. Frank has to go to work and Kevin has to go to school. Frank's father is a hands-off person. Therefore, the daughter born to Queenie is forced into her hands. She is now in her 60s. Carrying a granddaughter around 1 year old and not having a sudden death is lucky for her. The reason why Frank's family wants me to go back now is to find a free nanny to replace Frank's mother's job. And now Frank is divorced with 2 children, and one is still breastfeeding. Even a female ghost would run away at the sight of him. Kevin's regret is not because he really knows he was wrong before, but because his treatment now is completely different from when I was still there. Not only does his father beat and scold him from time to time, but even his grandma, who used to call him "dear grandson" all the time, because she is in her 60s and still has to take care of her grandchildren, now scolds them as wild children without a mother as soon as she sees them with a gloomy look. Kevin is even worse. After school, he has to help his grandma take care of his sister. I admit that I just want to see Kevin live a worse life than in his previous life. So, I deliberately went to see his joke, watching him holding his sister and being scolded as a wild child by his grandma without daring to talk back. My resentment from my previous life is finally gone. At this moment, I look at Kevin and ask, "Do I look like a fool to you?" Kevin: "Me, I don't even want you anymore. Do you think I will still care about your dad? Will I go back and help others take care of children and stand up for you?" Kevin: "Me, get out." Kevin really left this time. 2 years later, he came back to find me again. Because Frank's mother really had a sudden death. After Frank's mother died, Frank directly told Kevin not to go to school anymore and go back to work and help raise his sister. So, Kevin came to find me again. Perhaps it's because we haven't seen each other for several years and we look strange to each other. Or perhaps in these years, he has lived a servant's life in Frank's family and finally realizes that he could be carefree back then, all because I was protecting him. This time, he finally didn't shout loudly things like, "It's my duty to raise him," anymore. Instead, he asked me humbly in a low voice, "Mom, Dad said he can't afford to support 2 students by himself. Can you sponsor my tuition fees for school?" I gave him a sideways glance and said, "Does your dad have no job again? Or does your dad have a stepmother outside and wants to get rid of you as a burden?" As far as I know, Frank has changed his profession now. Although his salary is not as high as before, it's still more than $7,000. Not to mention raising children and luxury, but definitely not to the point where children can't even afford to go to school. Kevin endured with great effort, tears, and said, "Dad is unwilling to support me to go to school anymore. He said that I am now 16 and not a child laborer anymore. I can go out to work." Me? Question mark. At an age when one can commit a crime just because of being urged by others without even finishing high school and having no abilities at all. Is this called being able to go out to work? It's more like being able to go out and break the law, commit crimes, and harm society. While I was secretly complaining, he said again, "Mom, as long as you sponsor me to finish high school. For college expenses, I can take out a loan by myself." Probably because I have refused him too many times. Afraid that I won't agree, he hurriedly added, "I will definitely pay you back this money in the future." I thought for a while and said, "Okay." Kevin looked at me happily. I poured cold water on him. "I sponsor you not because you are my son, but because I don't want to cause trouble to society because I gave birth to a good-for-nothing. So, except for tuition fees, don't ask me for any other requests here." Kevin: "Okay." After a long time, Kevin said again, "Thank you, Mom." Me. For some reason, when I heard his thank you, I suddenly felt a twinge of sadness. In my previous life, I spent more than 20 years of painstaking efforts on him, but I didn't get a single word of thanks from him. Instead, I got him wanting to take my life. In this life, after I completely gave up on him, just by being willing to pay his tuition fees, he came to thank me. It's quite ironic. Epilogue: in the second spring festival after Kevin graduated from college, my younger brother transferred $50,000 to me, saying it was from Kevin, thanking me for being willing to pay his tuition fees back then and allowing him to continue his studies. I accepted it. My younger brother called and asked, "Sister, why did you block all his contact information?" Yes, after I supported Kevin until he finished college, on the day he completed his studies, I blocked all his contact information. If after he finishes college, he is still a social cancer who can't tell right from wrong, society will naturally deal with him. I am not sorry for society anymore and have a clear conscience. But my younger brother may have been possessed by the Leshan giant Buddha. He said again, "It's been so many years. Are you still resentful towards him?" He was young at that time and was used as a gun by his grandma. Between mother and son, how can there be such deep grudges? Me. My younger brother not only advised me. In these years, when he occasionally passed by Kevin's place, he would also go to see Kevin and give Kevin some pocket money in my name. Otherwise, Kevin wouldn't give $50,000 to my younger brother and ask him to transfer it to me. But I thought for a while and said, "Stay away from the fire." My younger brother, ? Me, I'm afraid it will produce relics. My younger brother. As for forgiving Kevin, I can't do it, even if he is my own son. When I think of my previous life, I raised him alone for so many years. As a result, he called Queenie Mom to discuss me just for Frank's 100,000 or so. He also selfishly took the money and ran away after I got sick. I can't help but want to beat him to death. The best state for us in this life is that after I fulfill my responsibility, we will each be well in the future.